So what happens legally when someone's actions or maybe their inaction causes you harm? A driver texting runs a red light, or a company knowingly sells a product that's dangerous. Today, we're diving into the area of law that deals with all these civil wrongs, an area known as torts. But instead of starting with a dry legal definition, let's start with a story, a real event. Picture this. A pipeline company is digging up a sidewalk in the middle of a busy city. They hit a gas line, and the result is a massive, catastrophic explosion and fireball. This one event, well, it sets the stage for everything we're about to explore. And just think about the people caught in the middle of this, the firefighters and police officers who rushed in and got badly injured, the owner of a salon whose business was just gone in an instant. They've all suffered these huge, life-changing losses. So what now? What can they actually do about it from a legal standpoint? To answer that question, we're going to use this explosion as our case study, because this wasn't just some freak accident that nobody could have prevented. Oh no, this was a textbook example of a very specific type of tort called negligence. Okay, so first things first, what in the world is a tort? Well, put simply, it's a wrongful act that messes with someone else's rights and causes them some kind of harm. It's how the legal system deals with harm between two private parties, when there's no contract involved. Now, it's really easy to get torts and crimes mixed up, but they are fundamentally different. It's almost like they operate in two parallel universes of the law, and each one has a completely different mission. Let's break down exactly what that means. See, the biggest difference really boils down to the goal. A tort case is all about making things right for the victim. The goal is compensation, usually money, to try and make them whole again. A criminal case, that's about punishment. That's the state, on behalf of all of society, going after the wrongdoer to penalize them with fines or even jail time. It's really the difference between personal justice and public justice. So, for the victims of that explosion to win their case, their legal team had to prove the pipeline company was negligent. And proving negligence isn't just about pointing a finger and saying, they messed up. Nope. It's a legal checklist with 4 pillars that all have to be standing. And here they are. This is the absolute foundation of any negligence claim. A plaintiff has to prove all 4 of these things in this order. Think of it like a chain: duty, breach, causation, and damages. If you're missing even one of those links, the whole case just falls apart. Okay, so link number 1 is duty. Did the person who caused the harm actually have a legal responsibility to be careful in the first place? The law pretty much says we all have a general duty of care not to cause foreseeable harm to others, our neighbors, as the law sometimes calls them. Second, we have breach. So, if a duty existed, did the person fail to meet that standard? The test here is what we call the reasonable person standard. We ask ourselves, what would a reasonably careful person have done in that same situation? If the defendant's actions fall short of that, well, that's a breach of duty. Third up is causation. This one's critical. The breach has to be the thing that actually caused the injury. You have to draw a direct line. The simplest test is the but-for test. But for the defendant's action, would the injury have happened? It's like a domino effect. Their action has to be the finger that pushed over the first domino, leading directly to the final one falling over. And finally, the fourth link, damages. The victim has to have suffered a real, actual, legally recognized harm. We're talking medical bills, destroyed property, lost wages, that kind of thing. You know the phrase, no harm, no foul? In tort law, that's literally true. Without real damages, you don't have a case. All right, so now that we have our 4-part framework, duty, breach, causation, damages, let's circle back to that explosion and see exactly how the victim's lawyers used it against the pipeline company. Let's start with that first pillar, duty. I mean, think about it. You've got a company using heavy equipment digging up a public sidewalk right next to a known gas line. Did they owe a duty of care to the people and businesses around them? It seems kinda obvious, right? Yeah, the answer is a huge, resounding yes. The law is crystal clear on this. When you're doing something inherently dangerous, like digging around gas lines in a city, you have a very high duty of care to protect everyone around you from the exact kind of harm that happened here. An explosion wasn't just possible, it was entirely foreseeable. So duty is established. That's a check. Now we get to the next crucial question. Did the company actually breach that duty? Did their actions fall below the standard of what a reasonable pipeline company would have done? And the evidence of the breach here was just staggering. I mean, we're talking about a crew that ignored bright paint on the sidewalk that basically screamed gas line here. They didn't even use a basic safety checklist before they started digging. And get this, an expert who'd looked at over 1,000 similar cases testified that this company's list of mistakes was among the absolute worst he had ever seen. Wow. So with a crystal clear duty and a really shocking breach, the last two pillars, causation and damages, were undeniable. The company's failures directly caused the explosion, which caused catastrophic harm. So after hearing all that evidence, the jury found the company negligent and awarded just two of the many victims a total of $10.4 million. But a verdict like that isn't always a sure thing. Even when a defendant seems clearly negligent, they aren't defenseless. The law gives them specific arguments they can make that can sometimes reduce or maybe even completely wipe out their liability. For example, a defendant might argue something called contributory negligence, which basically says, hey, the person who got hurt was being careless too. Or they might argue assumption of risk, where they claim the person knew what they were getting into was dangerous and did it anyway. These defenses can totally change the game. So why do we care about all of this? Why does it matter? Well, tort law isn't just about sensational headlines and these huge multi-million-dollar payouts. It actually plays a really fundamental role in how our society works. At the end of the day, the threat of a tort lawsuit is one of the most powerful tools we have for accountability. It creates this massive financial incentive for companies to spend money on safety, for professionals to be careful, and for all of us to think about how our actions might impact other people. It's the legal system's way of trying to prevent the next explosion before it happens. But, and there's always a but, right? This system has its critics. For a long time now, there's been this big debate about whether our society has become too litigious, too quick to sue. And that's led to calls for tort reform, which are efforts to limit lawsuits or cap the money people can get, all based on the idea that the fear of lawsuits is bad for business and drives up costs for everyone. And all of this leaves us with a really big, really complicated question. Tort law is this constant balancing act. How do we make sure that individuals who are wrongfully injured get justice without creating a system where the fear of being sued places an unfair cost on the rest of society? It's a debate that goes right to the heart of our legal system. And believe me, there are no easy answers.